You know it's this. Take a perk and a talk of that shit. Money swallowed like sis. Did it perfect in the kid. Got a billion who sang on my head. Look up better. Put on the road I just spent. I know we got $1 million. The devil that shit ain't not cheaper again.
Hello and welcome back, fellow anime lovers, to MangaMuse. I am delighted to have you join us once again in the world of fanfiction and fantasy. This is the 5th part of What If Naruto Enters Total Drama Island. Special note, this fanfic is written and a masterpiece of Pixel's Fanbook on FANFICTIONnet. Do check and support the author too. Now smash the like, share and subscribe button for more. Also press the bell icon so that you never miss such great parts. Thanks for the introduction. Now let's dive into the world. With the Gophers. At this point in time, it's safe to say that the base were a lot better off than the Gophers were. At worst, they had to deal with Duncan's and Naruto's stories and their currently missing teammates. But currently, the Gophers were actually dealing with a bear, one that somehow wandered onto their campsite and was looking at them as they were in a tree they climbed to get away from the bear. So, what do we do now? Trent asks while sharing a branch with Gwen and Heather. Don't look at me. Heather says, after seeing Trent and Gwen look at her. It was your idea to climb up trees. Gwen states that, since it was indeed Heather's idea to climb up the tree, and was her fault they were in this position. Well, why don't you ask the bear expert? Heather yells as she looks up at the one person in her team who claimed he fought a bear much larger than the one currently terrorizing their campsite. Hey Owen, what now? She asks. How should I know? Owen yells, clinging onto the tree for dear life. Dude, you said you called a bear with a shotgun when you and your grandpops were out hunting. Lashana says, recalling the story he told not even a moment ago. I was being theatrical. Owen yells, and it is at this point that everyone realizes that he made it all up. Oh, this is all your fault, Heather yells at the bug guy while glaring at him. If you didn't roar like that earlier, that bear down there wouldn't have come to our camp. She yells at him as if it was his fault they were in this position. Oh, well I'm sorry for messing around a little bit and for living. Owen yells before he starts banging his head against the tree. Hey, hey, hey. Easy up on the guy. Trent says, trying to defuse the situation before it gets worse. I mean, he did bring us all that fish. He says before pointing down to the fire, where the fish was still cooking, and where they saw the bear was currently sniffing said fish. Hey! Back off from our fish. Heather yells at the bear, not letting it eat her dinner. It's probably eaten Izzy. Lindsay cries out, fearing the worst for their currently missing teammate. Then it shouldn't be hungry anymore. Heather says, causing the others to gasp at her words and look at her in shock. What? This is survival of the fittest. She should have just peed in her pants like Cody did. She says, and this causes Cody to look down in shame as he had hoped no one had noticed his embarrassing moment. While this happened, a snap was heard and everyone felt the tree shake a bit, especially Lashana who felt it more. She looked down and noticed the branch she was on was starting to shake more before finally snapping under her and causing her to fall off the tree and to the ground, where the bear was. Once she sat up, she was face to face with the growling beast and everyone watched on in fear and shock. Dear Abby, she's going to die. Owen yells. Lashana fearfully backs away from the bear with it following her until she hits the base of the tree, leaving her cornered. The bear stands up and looms over Lashana who looks at it in utter terror. Nice bear. Lashana squeaked out before the bear roared and she screams, somebody help me. Her teammates started screaming various things, to get the bear's attention so she could run but it wasn't working since the bear processed to, smile. Hee hee. Hey, are you okay? The bear asks, and this makes everyone go silent as Lashana just looks at it with a confused expression as she looks up at the others. Did the beat just ask me a question? Lashana asks. The Gophers in the tree look down in confusion. wondering if their ears are playing tricks on them before some of them recognize the voice that the bear uses when it asks its question. Wait! Gwen utters as it dawns on her. But before she could speak any further, they watched the bear reach for its head, and pull it off. Turns out, it was a costume, and inside of the costume was Izzy. The Gophers shout, seeing their assumed dead teammate wearing the bear suit. Yep. It's me. Izzy chirpily says with a smile. Oh my goodness, I did not see that coming. Owen yells, sliding off the tree. He couldn't be happier to see Izzy. Okay, I'm so confused right now. Was Izzy always a bear or? Lindsay asks, clearly confused by this development as Izzy looks up at her. Nah, I'm just wearing a bear suit I found. Izzy answers the blonde. What are you? Some kind of weirdo? Gwen asks while glaring down at Izzy. I thought it'd be funny. Izzy says as she giggles. Confessional, Izzy. Okay. That was so funny. Izzy stated while still in the bear suit. Like, oh, it's a bear. Oh no, and like, we're gonna die now. Help. Help. Ha 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 ha. And I'm like, rah. I'm gonna eat you. Ah ha 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 ha. Like I could actually do that. There's no way, okay. End confessional. With the base. A little after the campfire stories were told, the killer base were all huddled up in their tent. But, with how many they had on their team, it was strong to sleep in the tent together since they had to press together just to fit in it, and this made it difficult to fall asleep. They had suspected that Chris had intended when he brought the tents. Currently, the only ones who were able to sleep were Duncan, Eva, and Naruto. The others were trying to go to sleep, but with the current situation, it was tough and Bridget couldn't due to the noises she'd hear from the forest around her. Suddenly, Naruto sat up from his spot, looking tired as he felt a certain call. I need to use it. Naruto mutters as he gets up from his slumber and crawls toward the tent's opening. Hey! Naruto stops and sees Bridget was up and looking at him. Where are you going? She asks with a slightly scared tone. I just need to use the bathroom. I'll be back right quick. Naruto says, as the sounds of an owl hooting is heard and Bridget finches. Oh, okay. Be careful. Thanks. Naruto says as he leaves the tent to go and do his business. Bridget tries to go back to sleep but fails due to another owl hooting. Unaware to the two, someone wasn't in the tents like the others were. Somewhere in the woods. Naruto finishes doing his business and was about to go back to the tent when he hears a splash not too far from him. Curious about what was the cause, he walks toward the source of where the splash had come from and he stumbles upon a waterfall. A waterfall? Maybe it's connected to the stream of water I found the fish. Naruto thought, but just as he was about to leave, he heard another splash and turns to the waterfall and saw a small feminine figure at the base of the waterfall, twirling in the water and dancing. He watches this figure perform such elegant twirls and kicks in the air as each movement made the water move around her. It was like he was watching a ballerina performing in front of him and he was mesmerized by this. He had a massive blush on his face. He wanted to know more about this mysterious figure. He sees them stop dancing and just stand in the middle of the water, taking in deep breaths as their dance was done. Seeing this, Naruto moves and walks over to the figure, to ask them who they are and something else. Hey, are you Naruto was saying but he didn't watch his footing as he slips on a rock and fell into the water, alerting the figure and turning to him to see he had a fish on his face blocking his vision. That hurt. He mutters out, from a bit of pain due to the fall. He removes the fish from his face and stands back up on his feet as he looks around the waterfall, and to his surprise, the figure has vanished from sight. What the? Where'd they go? He asks, confused as he looks around for the figure a bit more. Suddenly he felt something hit the tip of his nose. He wondered what just hit his nose when he started to feel raindrops beginning to pour down. CRP. Naruto yells before he starts bolting back to the campsite while trying to keep himself dry. While he was running back to the tent, he spotted someone also running toward the tent and quickly recognized them. Dawn! Naruto yells, causing the girl to turn to him and see him catch up. Oh Naruto! What are you doing out here? Dawn asks as she was blushing while Naruto started running alongside her. I had to use the bathroom and then I went to the waterfall and... Naruto stops speaking as he remembers the figure in the water and her dance. What? Dawn looks at him with a nervous expression, something he didn't notice since he was busy thinking about what he saw until he seemingly snaps out of his thoughts and turns back to her. Nothing, maybe I was seeing things. Naruto says, pushing back the images of the mysterious lady of the waterfall in the back of his mind. And you? What were you doing out here? He asks and barely notices her flinch slightly. Oh, I heard a wolf howl and went over to him and helped him. He had gotten separated from his pack and I pointed the direction back. Dawn says as Naruto looks at her. Really? Naruto says, noticing that her hair was slightly wetter than her clothes were, and her clothes did look than how they were usually. Why yes. Dawn says, looking more nervous than before, while slightly praying to Maher Gaia that Naruto would buy into her lie. Okay. Let's hurry back, the rain is really starting to come down. Naruto says and Dawn lets out a silent sigh of relief as they continue running back to their campsite. Confessional, Naruto. Dawn's hiding something. Naruto says as he crosses his arms. But I'm not going to pry it out of her. If she wants to talk about whatever she's hiding, I'll listen to it. He says, shrugging his shoulders. End confessional. I wonder how the Gophers are doing at this moment. Dawn asks. Maybe better than we are at the moment since they're in their tent, dry and sleeping. Naruto says as they continue to run from the downpour. With the Gophers. Naruto's assumption couldn't have been any more wrong at this moment. They were back up in the tree they had climbed previously during Izzy's prank. The reason? A little bit later after the prank, and while they were eating their fish, another bear stumbled onto their campsite. Owen approached the bear, one thing led to another and Owen ripped a piece of the bear's fur off its body, revealing that it was a real bear. Resulting in it roaring at them and causing them to run and climb back up the tree. So, that's what happened, the Gophers up in the tree, getting drenched by the rain with the bear still waiting down on the ground. Time skip, morning the next day. With the base. The base were peacefully sleeping in their dry tent, thanks to Dawn's tarp blocking most of the rain. Courtney was having a surprisingly pleasant sleep, despite she was sleeping on the ground with no sleeping bag. It was thanks to the warm, comfortable pillow she was using. Morning princess. A voice greets her as Courtney smiles. Morning pillow. Courtney mutters in her sleep as she snuggles closer to the pillow. It took her a few moments before she opens her eyes, realizing a few things as she looked at the pillow she was using, to see that she was actually lying on Duncan's chest, with the punk smirking at her. Oh my god. Ew. Courtney shouts as she shoots from Duncan, in disgust. She looks around and saw that it was only them in the tent. What were you doing to me? She yells at Duncan who just sat up. I could ask you the same thing. Duncan calmly says, with his smirk remaining on his face. You were snuggling against me. Courtney yells at Duncan but he remains calm. Actually princess, I was trying to catch some Z's during the night. Next thing I know, you wrap your arms around me. So, in reality, you were cuddling up to me. Duncan says, smirking as he sees Courtney just looks at him with anger. You're such an ape. Courtney yells at the delinquent as she leaves the tent with Duncan just shrugging his shoulders. Been called worse. Duncan says before he exits the tent to go and help his team clear up the campsite before they make their journey back. Confessional, Courtney. Okay. Just to state the record here. I was totally asleep and therefore, unconscious during the time of the alleged cuddling with that caveman. Courtney yells as she shivers in disgust at the thought of her and Duncan sleeping together. So essentially, it's like it will never happen when both of us are awake. She says, looking at the camera with a firm expression. Static. Confessional, Duncan. Oh yeah. She's so into me. Duncan says, looking at the camera with a smirk. End confessionals. With the Gophers. The screaming Gophers were in better shape than they could ever been, given the events of last night. Due to the bear, which thankfully had finally left, they ended up sleeping in the tree they were on all night long, and this left them all with stiff bodies and aching backs. Well, I think it's safe, guys. The bear's gone. Trent says while cracking his back. And the map. Gwen says as she shows the others the now soaked, and ruined map of the island. Okay, I don't know how raccoons sleep in trees but I'm so stiff. Izzy says, while still in her bear suit, as she cracks her back. They must be really limber. Owen says while he was stretching out his arms, trying to get the sensation in them back. Heather stomps up to the two of them, looking completely irate. You know what, crazy girl, I don't want to hear another word from you or the bear hunter here. If you two hadn't been acting like bear bait all night, we could have actually slept in our tent. Heather shouts at the two while furiously glaring at them. Just then, a little blue bird landed on their tent next to them and started singing. Leading Owen, Izzy, and Heather to yell. Shut up. At the poor bird, completely scaring it. And so, once the two teams had cleared their campsites, the race was on. Both the base and the Gophers were racing back to the camp as fast as they could, especially the Gophers since they had no map to guide them back and had to rely on their memory. The two teams raced through the woods, to be the first ones back and win the challenge. At camp. Chris was over at the campfire area, putting wood into the bonfire pit. He was preparing things for the elimination ceremony that was going to be held that night. Just then, the host started hearing footsteps rapidly coming toward him and voices and turned around to see who was it. And he sees the killer base running toward him, minus Katie and Sadie of course. Courtney notices the lack of Gophers and realizes they were the first to arrive. We're the first ones back. We won. Courtney cheers as the rest start cheering as well. Moments later, the screaming Gophers arrived and were shocked to see the base was already there, cheering and realizing that they had lost, again. Oh no! They beat us here already. Heather yells as she is extremely mad that they have lost another challenge, 4 times now. She then turns to Owen and glares at him before pushing him down. This is all your fault. She yells at him as she now knows who to vote off now. Not so fast, Gopherinos. Chris says, causing the base to stop cheering and the Gophers to stop sulking as they turn to him with confused expressions. He looks at the base. It seems the killer base are missing 2 fishes in their school. He says as the Gophers looked at the base and realized the twins weren't with them. The base realizes this too. Oh, you mean Katie and Sadie? Courtney asks. She knew they weren't with them since last night and had no idea where they could be. I'm pretty sure they got eaten by wolves last night. She says while Duncan nods. Darn shame. Duncan says with a straight face. Dawn senses something and sighs, as everyone starts hearing heavy footsteps coming toward them. They turn and see the best friends coming to camp. We made it. Katie yells with relief in her tone. We're safe. Sadie yells with equal relief as she and Katie hug. The two had slept in the cave they ran into the night and narrowly escaped a bear that had its fur torn off from its head in the morning, and they'd been running toward camp since. The two turned to their team and started explaining the things they'd had to experience. Oh my gosh, you guys. We totally got lost and then got into a massive fight and there was this huge bear and he was like, "Roar. You're in my crib, so get out." And then we had to run for it and it was so scary. The two girls went on, and it was really difficult to make what they were saying with how they were emotional and speaking too fast. Oh Sadie, I'm so sorry I said I'm prettier than you. Katie says, recalling the things she said during their massive fight. And I'm sorry I brought up the snack shack. Sadie says. And I'm sorry I said your butt was too fit to fit in the bus seats. Katie says and Sadie looks at her, confused. You did? Sadie asks as she didn't recall Katie ever saying that to her during their fight. Well, not to your face. Katie says, looking a bit sheepish. Oh, who cares? We're safe now and you're my best friend and I love you. Sadie yells, hugging her bestie who returns the hug. I love you too. Katie happily exclaims as the two hug it out. But Courtney walks up to them and clears her throat. Are you two done with your love fest? Courtney asks in a polite tone as the two besties nod. Good, because thanks to you two, we just lost the challenge. She yells with a glare, getting two to shrink back a bit. Alright Killer Base. One of your fishy butts is going home tonight. Chris says, causing the base to slump down in defeat and the Gophers to cheer, having finally won a challenge in what seemed ages. He turns to the victors, Gophers, you win the challenge and are safe from elimination. And you've also won something else. An all-expenses-paid trip to the tuck shop and another hot tub party. He says and this gets the Gophers excited as they run off to the tuck shop to get their sweets. The base groans at this since they could have really used that. Most of them turn to the besties and glare at them. Great, there goes the streak. Naruto mutters with a sigh as he pinches his nose. He turns to the two. Out of curiosity, what made you two get lost when you were with us? He asks and the two start to get nervous. We found this blueberry bush. Katie stutters out, loud enough for them all to hear. I see. Naruto mutters with another sigh as Eva furiously glares at them. You mean we lost the challenge, all because you saw berries? Eva roars out as Katie and Sadie shrink more. Well, when you put it like that, yes. Sadie says with a nervous smile. Eva was about to stomp her way to them when DJ and Duncan grabbed her and held her back. Naruto puts his hands to his face and groans loudly into them before running them down. Awesome, real, awesome, I need to shirt something out, I'll see you guys later. Naruto grumbles while walking away. The others started to do the same while Courtney helped Duncan and DJ guide Eva away so that she wouldn't do anything deadly to the two. Later that night. Location, the dramatic bonfire ceremony. Night fell upon Camp Wawanakwa as all the members of the killer base were sitting on the stumps at the campfire site with Chris in front of the metal barrel. The winning streak was nice while it lasted. Killer base, welcome back to the campfire ceremony. It's been a while since you were here. Chris says with a chuckle as everyone really was in the mood for any joke. He holds out a plate with 10 marshmallows with there being 11 base members. You've all cast your votes and made your decision. Chris says while holding up his plate of marshmallows. There are only 10 marshmallows on this plate. The camper who does not receive a marshmallow tonight must immediately return to the dock of shame to catch the boat of losers. That means you're out of the contest and you can't come back, ever. He says, adding the dramatics to things as the campers already knew this. Now, I know you're tired. So, I'll throw your marshmallow at you. Savvy? He asks and the campers sigh in relief since they'd rather have their marshmallow thrown than have to walk to get it. Naruto, Dawn, Harold. Chris calls out the three and throws them their marshmallows as they catch it and were happy to be safe. Harold, Courtney, Jeff. Chris calls out the next three and throws them their marshmallows as they catch it and are also happy to be safe. Duncan, Eva, and DJ, the delinquent, Jock, and Gentle Giant smirk/smile as they catch their marshmallows. And that left only one marshmallow. And two campers remaining. Katie and Sadie. The two friends hugged one another, as they knew, only one of them could stay and they'd be forced to separate. Chris lifts the last marshmallow off the plate and looks at the two for a bit, seeing how scared and tense they are as he decides to call out the last name. "Ladies, the last marshmallow for the night goes to Katie," Chris says, throwing the marshmallow at them, only for it to not be caught as they were still clinging onto to one another. "No. Why Sadie? Why her?" Katie cries out, finally separating from Sadie so she can cry, and Sadie does the same. "This is so unfair." Sadie cries into her hands. "I so can't do this. I've never been anywhere without Sadie. We have to be together or I'll totally die." Katie yells out before Sadie stops crying in her face and grabs her tanned friend by her shoulders and makes her look at her. "Katie, listen to me. You can do this. You are strong and appealing, and maybe even smarter than me, and plus, you're the funnest girl I know. You have to do this, for the both of us." Sadie yells as she got teary eyes, along with Katie before Sadie was eventually led away to the dock to board the boat of losers. "Sadie!" Katie cries out as she runs after her friend, to see her leave. "I'll go with her, to make sure she'll be fine," Bridget says as she goes after Katie, to make sure she was alright. The others just remained there at the campfire, hearing the distant cries, and were beginning to feel bad about tearing the two apart, but they should have seen this coming when they signed up for the show. Since there was always a chance that they were going to separate at any point. Naruto felt bad about this as he couldn't help but think about his past and remember one of the two girls he knew back then. He remembers how she was like Katie and Sadie, always bright and happy about things and liked to be around people. Especially her cousin, even if the cousin didn't like spending time with them. "I hope they're doing okay right now," Naruto thought, wondering about his childhood friends and how they were doing at this time as he hoped that they'd see him on TV and recognize him. We pick things right from the last episode as we see all of the current Killer Base members still gathered around at the campfire except for Bridget and Katie. They were still a little bummed out after losing since they had a streak going. Just then the sound of crying got everyone's attention and they turned to see Bridget holding Katie's hand, with Katie crying loudly with tears staining her face and holding onto a torn-off piece of the dock in her other hand. Bridget sat Katie down on a stump with the girl hugging the piece of wood. "Oh good, you got her to get away from the dock, in a sense," Naruto says, looking at the piece of wood the crying girl was hugging. "It was a long goodbye." Bridget tells them with a bit of a tired frown. The others nod, understanding given her condition. They could tell since it had been a good hour since Sadie had been voted off. The team stayed at the bonfire for a while, not wanting to head back to camp just yet, at least not while Katie was like this. Just then, everyone hears footsteps approaching them as they look over and see the screaming Gophers heading over with Beth carrying around a plate of green gelatin with something inside it. "What do you guys want?" Courtney asks, standing up and glares at the opposing team. "Come to rub it in. We got you some extra dessert after our tuck shop party," Trent explains as Beth holds up the plate of dessert. "Thought you might want some." "So what?" Courtney says, crossing her arms and narrows her eyes at the Gophers. She wasn't quite believing what they were saying. "You're just being nice." "Okay," Gwen says, rolling her eyes, and gives the real reason her team was here as she points at Owen. "Owen stank up our cabin and we need some time for it to air out." As if on cue, Owen farts, with Trent wincing a bit in disgust. Beth then walks up to Courtney and holds up the gelatin for her with the Hispanic freezing at it. "No!" Courtney screams as she seems to actually back away from the dessert in fear. Everyone gives Courtney a strange look as the CIT quickly tries to recompose herself. "I mean, no thanks. I'm good." "What, are you on a diet or something?" Duncan asks, confused as to why Courtney reacted, say fearfully, to the dessert. "No," Courtney yells, glaring at the delinquent. "I just don't like green jelly, okay?" Everyone decided to simply shrug it off and pay it no mind. At least all except Dawn, who, in true Dawn fashion, knew what the true deal was with Courtney but chose to keep silent as it wasn't her business. Beth then walks up to DJ and held the dessert to him, but DJ took a look at what was inside of it and had a reaction similar to Courtney's. Snake! DJ screams as he smacks the dessert away from him, with the green gelatin landing on the ground in front of the Gophers. Cody walks up to the ruined jelly and pulls out what was inside of the desert and shows it was a red gummy worm. Chill, dude. Cody tells DJ as he holds the candy worm up for the big softy to see. It's just a gummy worm. Sorry for trippin', . DJ says as he slumps down. Snakes just freak me out. He says while Tyler walks up to him and pats the gentle giant on his back. I feel you, chickens personally give me the creeps, dude, Tyler confesses with a shiver at the mere thought of them. Wait, you're afraid of chickens? Gwen asks, since chickens are an odd thing to be afraid of. Tyler sighs and nods, looking exhausted from thinking about his fear. Wow, that's really lame, man, Duncan chuckles with a smirk while DJ now rubs Tyler's back. Eventually, the Gophers sat down on some spare logs and the two teams started hanging out. Confessional, Gwen. So suddenly, everyone's having this big sharefest by the fire. Gwen begins explaining what happened at the campfire after Tyler and DJ reveal their fears. Like Beth went on and on about how her mortal fear is being covered by bugs, Harold's afraid of ninjas, Lashana's afraid of spiders, even Heather admitted she's afraid of sumo wrestlers. End confessional. My worst fear? Gwen asks. She hardly had to think about this one once the phobia baton was passed to her. I guess, being buried alive. She says, shivering at the thought of her fear. Walking through a minefield. Lindsay says up on her fear. In heels. Flying, man. Owen says with a fearful expression. That's some crazy stuff. Dentists, they think they're real doctors, but to me, they're devils. Izzy yells, shaking her head as she seemingly remembers it. I'm scared of hail. Jeff says in a bit of a low tone as he looks into the campfire. It's small but deadly, dude. Katie sniffs a few times before saying her fear. Bad haircuts. Oh, okay. I change mine. Lindsay says up after Katie gave her fear. That's so much scarier than a minefield. After Lindsay's change, everyone looks around a bit, waiting to see who was next to admit their fear. Their eyes eventually land on Eva, who was trying to act calm and failing at it since her nervousness was obvious by her body language. As she notices everyone was staring, she let out a groan before sitting up a bit and taking in a deep breath. I don't like octopus. Eva grumbles out as she crosses her arms and looks away from the others. There was an incident when I was younger and they just freak me out everything I see it. She shudders out before quickly looking over to the person next to her, who ended up being Bridget, in an attempt to take attention away from her. I'm sure you guys noticed last night, but I'm kinda afraid of the woods. Bridget says, feeling uncomfortable from the experience of last night. Duncan snorts. Kinda is an understatement. Duncan says with a smirk, causing Bridget to give him a small glare. Cody rubs a finger against his chin for a bit in thought and eventually shared what his fear was. Having to defuse a time bomb under pressure. He says. Being completely cut off from nature. Dawn says, shivering at the thought while Naruto just places his hand on her shoulder, to calm her down. Something she was grateful for as she smiles at him. I'm not afraid of anything. Courtney confidently says. Bologna. Duncan disguises his word as a cough while Dawn rolls her eyes a little bit. Oh really? Courtney narrows her eyes at the delinquent. Well, what exactly is your phobia, Mr. Know-It-All, she says, crossing her arms. Duncan actually flinches at this and everything went quiet except for the fire crackling in front of him. All eyes were now on Duncan as the delinquent lowered his head. Seeing no real way out, Duncan decides to just rip the bandage off. See Celine Dion music store standees. He shamefully admits. Huh, excuse me? Cody asks with a laugh as he puts a hand around his ear. I didn't quite get that. He says, even holding his hand up to his ear. Duncan tires making himself smaller as Trent speaks up with a chuckle. Dude, did you say Celine Dion music store standees? The musician asks as Duncan puts his hands on his face. To hide his shame. Ooh, I love Celine Dion. Lindsay excitedly says before getting confused about something. What's a standee? You know. Trent explains to the dumb blonde. That cardboard cutout thing that stands in the music store whenever the artist releases a new album. Don't say it, dude. Duncan shouts at Trent with a glare. So if we had a cardboard standee right now. Courtney just had to take the chance to tease Duncan about this. Especially since all the stunts he's pulled since day one of camp. Shut up. Duncan yells as he covers his eyes. The delinquent then uncovers them a bit, narrows them, and points at Trent. What about you? Okay, well, I hate mimes. Like, a lot. Trent quickly admits before the guitarist turns to the last person who hadn't said anything during this sharing session, Naruto. The rocker had been, oddly quiet during this whole thing. It seemed like he tried his best to hide in plain sight, but it seems that didn't work with him being put in the spotlight. Hey, Naruto. Naruto flinches once he hears his name and everyone's eyes were soon on him. You've been weirdly quiet all night, man. What's your fear? Naruto gulps audibly as he slowly looks around. The eyes of 19 campers and who knows how many cameras were now on him. Similar to Duncan, there was no way out. At least Duncan sort of softened the blow that would have, as he was sure most would find his fear completely stupid and pathetic. So he just went out with it. I don't like. See Chucky the friendly bear, okay. He stammers out. Wait. Chucky the friendly bear. Courtney and nearly everyone gave Naruto a look as he blushes from embarrassment over the whole situation. You're seriously afraid of the mascot of that restaurant chain? She asks, and Naruto only nods. Why yeah. Naruto says, shifting a little in his stump as he tries to look away from everyone. Like Eva, something happened between me and that bear, I can't stand him. Wow, I didn't think it could get any more pathetic after Duncan's fear. Heather mocks, causing Naruto and Duncan to glare at Heather. Hey, it's alright. Dawn reassured Naruto as she gently put a hand on his shoulder. You have nothing to be ashamed of. She says. Naruto looks at her and smiles slightly at her. Just grateful for her trying to cheer him up. Thanks, Dawn. Confessional, Dawn. His aura, it was so, distressed. But, why? Dawn asks, wondering what was going on with Naruto's fear of Chucky the friendly bear. The girl knew everyone's secrets, strengths, weaknesses, insecurities, and more just with a mere look, and when she saw Naruto's aura, it took a dramatic change in how it flowed normally and the color. Whatever caused this fear must have been so bad, he's made a true effort to hide it in the deepest parts of his subconscious that not even I can see. What could have happened to him? End confessional. Look, can we just move on from me, please? Naruto asks as he puts his hand on top of the hand Dawn placed on him, unknowingly making the girl blush, and looks to the base's CIT teammate. Alright, Courtney, you're afraid of something since everyone else is. So, spit it out already. What is it? Nope. Courtney smirks and shakes her head. Nothing. Duncan chuckles a bit as he points a thumb to Courtney. That's not what she said last night after our stories, dude. Duncan. Courtney growls and glares at the delinquent. Did you ever consider that maybe I was just humoring you, Naruto, and your stupid stories? Sure, princess. Duncan says, smirking and rolling his eyes, back to his usual attitude now after facing the embarrassment of revealing his phobia. Whatever floats your boat. Shut up. Courtney yells as everyone present laughs. Time skip, the next morning. It was now the morning after the night everyone revealed their fears to each other. Everyone decided before going to bed, that what happened at the campfire last night, stays at the campfire last night and didn't speak one bit of it as they all got their breakfast. However, things were not going to be on their side today, especially with a certain host looming around. A whistle got everyone's attention as they saw Chris come into the mess hall and look at both teams at their tables. Campers. Chris announces with his usual grin on his face. Your next challenge is a little game I like to call, Phobia Factor. Prepare to face, your worst fears. Worse than this? Lashana asks in disgust as she lifts her fork to show, something that could best described as a gray hairy hot dog. We're in trouble. Gwen says as she had a bad feeling this challenge was going to be truly brutal. Now for our first victims, Heather. Chris announces while taking a bunch of cards out of his pocket. Meet us at the theater. He says. Heather takes a long sip of her coffee as Chris announces what she will be going through. It's sumo time. He yells upon hearing this. Heather's eyes shoot open as she spits out all her coffee, on Trent. Beth, Cody, and Lindsay all gasp as Chris moves on to the next announcement. He turns to Gwen. Gwen. You, me, the beach. A few tons of sand. Chris says and Gwen's eyes shoot wide open similar to Heather's as the goth loudly gasps. Wait, how did they know those were your worst fears? Lindsay asks in a confused tone after Chris lists the fears of not just one, but two of the campers. Ugh. Gwen groans before slapping her forehead as she lays her head down on the table. Trent was quick to sit next to the goth and rub her back to comfort her. Because we told them. She mutters as everyone hears her and freezes, now getting what was going on. Lindsay still didn't quite get it, so Trent further elaborated for the dumb blonde. At the campfire last night. Wait. Lindsay says as she starts to piece things together in her mind. They were listening to us? She asks. She was getting the pieces together. It's a reality show, Einstein. Gwen says irritably, rolling her eyes. They're always listening to us. But that's like eavesdropping. Lindsay gasps out in discomfort that all of their conversations were being listened in on, even though Chris said they would be monitored 24/7 on day one. Naruto groans and places his head on the table. We're so F. He. Dawn gasps as she looks at him. Naruto. There's no need for that kind of language. She scolds the rocker. Sorry, it's just. Naruto sighs again as he ran a hand across his face. Can't believe we were stupid enough to fall into a trap like this. Alright, campers. Better finish breakfast in the next 5 minutes. Chris announced to everyone as he held up his wrist and showed off his watch, specifically the time. Because once that's up, it's time to confront your fears and become better men, or chicken out and give the audience something to laugh at. He says before he realizes something. He turns to Chef. Chef Hatchet. Didn't you have a special order for Tyler here today? He asks, as Chef grins and gives him a nod. This got Tyler and some others to look at the cook and saw he was deep frying something. Tyler starts getting rightfully afraid as Chef walks out of the kitchen and over to him with a basket in hand, with something chicken-shaped inside it. Chef hands the teen the basket as Tyler gingerly grabs the chicken-shaped food item from it. Gulping audibly, Tyler nervously takes a bite of it, biting off its head and slowly holding it out at arm's length before a live chicken popped its head out of the deep-fried shell, prompting Tyler to scream. How the hell? Naruto utters, confused to hell as he wonders how the chicken survived being deep-fried like that. And he wasn't the only one who was thinking that. Here is how the challenges will go. To win, all you have to do is try and face your fear. You act like a scaredy cat and you lose your challenge. Simple. Chris tells them all as they nod to show they understand. Now, let's get this show on the road. He yells as he is about to leave but stops when he realizes Tyler was still screaming. Also, can someone make Tyler snap out of it? We're burning daylight here. He yells and leaves the mess hall while the others. Beth's challenge. After the time Chris had given everyone to prepare for the challenge, it was time for probably the most intense challenge yet of Total Drama Island. First up was Beth and her fear of being covered in bugs. For this challenge, Chris had set up a medium-sized inflatable pool filled to the brim with various bugs. Everyone was there to watch Beth do the challenge and either cringe in disgust, barf in DJ's case, or in Owen's case, faint at the sight. While he didn't have a fear of bugs, even Naruto was a little creeped out by the amount of bugs in the pool. Think you can do it, Beth? All you have to do is fully submerge yourself up to your neck for 10 seconds and you get the point. Chris says to Beth while she stands at the edge of the pool and looks over into it. Her face was pale, paler than it usually is as she gingerly moves her hand towards the bugs, and felt them wiggle and crawl around. She shivered in disgust and fear before removing her hand. Gulping, Beth steers her nerves down and closes her eyes tight as slowly she enters the bug-filled pool and submerges herself up to her elbow, attempting to work into it before vigorously shaking her head. No, no, no. I can't. Get them off me. Beth screams, as she jumps out of the pool and runs off, flailing her arm around to shake the bugs off that were still on her. Oh, not a good start for the Gophers. Off to the next challenge. Chris declares and Heather sighs in annoyance at her alliance member's failure. Base, 0 out of 10, Gophers, 0 out of 10. Lindsay's and Katie's challenge. Next up were Katie and Lindsay for the killer base and screaming Gophers respectively. The two shared a fear of bad haircuts, so Chris had ordered them to go to the mess hall where Chris had a matching pair of mallet-styled wigs. Chris was about to put one on each girl's head, only for Owen to grab one of them and put it on his head. The big guy looks at the wig and was impressed by how it looks on him to the point that he starts dancing around for a bit before tripping on one of the logs and hitting a wall face first, and lying on the floor, allowing the host to grab the ugly wig from him and placing them on Lindsay and Katie's heads. Just keep them on for 6 hours and you'll both earn a point for your team. Chris explains the rules of the challenge to the girls, causing the two to gulp audibly since they had to walk around looking like this. Lindsay's and Katie's challenge, to be continued. Owen's challenge. Next up was Owen, and his challenge was to fly around the island. But in what? Owen was introduced to an incredibly old and rusty plane that looked like it should never be allowed to move, let alone be in the air for a second. Its wings were held together by packing tape while one of the landing gear wheels wasn't even a wheel, it was an old ski that looked like it could fall off at any moment. Owen gasps as the door to the plane opens and Chef is in it, looking to be the pilot, while dressed as a flight attendant. The aerophobic was very reluctant to step into the plane but eventually did. Chef didn't give him a chance to back out as he closed and locked up the door and quickly got the shaky plane into the air, treating Owen to one of the most terrifying flying experiences ever in his life as he screamed in terror. Back on the ground, the teams hear Owen screams and hope for the best for him while Harold, the ginger, simply walks toward the bathroom with a magazine in hand and was about to head to a stall to do his business. Owen's challenge, to be continued. Harold's challenge. Harold minds his own business in his stall, reading his magazine. However, he hears something open and this causes him to look around. Before he knew it, ropes lower from the ceiling, and the ginger witnesses as 3 ninjas make their way into the room. Harold opens the door, his pants down to his ankles, and sees the 3 ninjas standing in front of him and narrow their eyes at him, and he freezes. This was the moment he feared, them having the numbers advantage on him and cornering him. The old him would have run off, but he decided not today. He had teammates relying on him and he had to prove himself to be helpful after how things have been for him for the last few challenges. So, taking in a deep breath, he looks at the ninjas. You 3 should know something. Harold says, making the ninjas raise an eyebrow, their eyes being the only thing not covered by their black outfits. When Chris gave us that time to prepare for our challenges, I had a sick feeling I would be cornered when I least expected. I'm not afraid of you all, I can take you all on. He yells before suddenly pulling out a pair of nunchucks and starting to twirl them around. The ninjas all flinched, seeing him twirl the weapon. WW8. One of the ninjas speaks with a fake Japanese accent. We are not real ninjas. We are just interns dressed as ninjas. That's what they all say. Harold says as he narrows his eyes at the ninjas and starts advancing toward them. Nunchaku was one of the things Harold learned during his time at one of the summer camps he's been to, which allowed him to spin them around skillfully and swap hands back and forth. He was getting confident as he saw the three ninjas back away from him and he started speeding up his twirling. Twack. However, this costs him in the end, as one of the ends of the nunchuck slams into his forehead, sending him falling back into the stall and lying there unconscious. The door to the bathroom opens and Chris sees the results. Despite the KO, Harold puts the base on the board. Chris says the teams as they waited outside the bathroom, and having seen what happened in the bathroom thanks to surveillance. What? But he failed. How do they still get a point? Heather yells in frustration before Chris holds up a hand to stop her. In the end, the attempt to face their fear is what means the most. Harold fully intended on fighting the ninjas if he hadn't knocked himself out. That, in the end, is what counts, he explains, smiling. Heather was about to complain before Chris silenced her by blasting his air horn into the air again. Someone get him to the med bay and on to the next. Chris yells before motioning the teams to follow. Base, 0 out of 10, Gophers, 1 out of 10. Lashana's challenge. Alright Lashana, you ready? Chris asks Lashana as he gestures to an opened-up box next to him. The perfect size for Lashana to lay down in. It was her turn and Lashana was only wearing a BR and her pants. Her shirt and sandals have been taken off per orders by Chris. However, the host did give her clear hardware glasses to wear. CC, can you at least explain to me what the heck it is I'm gonna be doing? Lashana stutters fearfully. The girl with attitude was scared out of her mind about how Chris was gonna exploit her arachnophobia. Sure. Chris says, shrugging his shoulders as he points to the box. Your challenge is to lay down in that box for 1 minute. Chris says as he lifts a cardboard box which sounds like it has something crawling around inside. A lot of things crawling around inside of it. With 50 tarantulas crawling all over you. All you have to do is stay in the box for 1 full minute. He yells, grinning as he opens the cardboard box to reveal the 50 tarantulas. Lashana pales at this. She reluctantly goes to the opened-up box and lies down in it right as Chris explains the rules of her challenge right before mentioning the thing about the tarantulas. 50 large spiders with hairy bodies walking all over her for a minute, it was Lashana's worst nightmare come true. You'll be okay Lashana. Gwen's voice speaks up and reassures her. They're just tarantulas. They can't hurt you. Easy for you to say, honey. Lashana shrieks in absolute terror. You're not the one that's gonna have 50 of those sick little pests crawling around all over you. What if they bite me and I get poisoned? She shrieks as Chris walks over to her, with the box of tarantulas in hand. Relax, these were devenomized so you won't need to worry about venom at all. Just relax and it'll be over before you know it. Chris says. He stands beside her with the box, ready to pour the tarantulas into the box with her. You ready? He asks with his grin still on his face. No. Lashana screams. Great. Chris says. He lifts off the lid of the cardboard. Release the spiders. Aahawahaha. Lashana shrieks in a pitch that should have been impossible for humans to make as 50 tarantulas were dumped all over her. She forces herself to keep her mouth shut to make sure none of these disgusting things get in her mouth. But Lashana was shaking more than a chihuahua in the winter as she felt all 400 hairy legs crawling over her body. She tries her best to keep herself from standing up and running away from these things as fast as she could, but eventually a few ended up crawling on the goggles she was looking, giving Lashana a near point-blank view of them. This was the last straw for her as Lashana let out another ear-piercing and glass-breaking shriek before bolting up from the box, jumping out, and running away as fast as she could. A few of the tarantulas were still clinging onto her. All of her teammates gasp at this, except for Heather, who facepalms, as Chris checks his stopwatch and saw the time before shaking his head. Not even 10 seconds. Chris gives Lashana's time in the spider box. That's just sad. Base, 0 out of 10, Gophers, 1 out of 10. Izzy's challenge. We return to the mess hall where Izzy's challenge was about to take place. The only issue was, come on Izzy. He's just going to look at your teeth. There might be a licensed dentist here, but the challenge isn't getting a full dental procedure. All he has is one pick and a mirror. Gwen yells up to her teammate, trying to get the red-haired girl to get down from the ceiling. Izzy could barely even look down at the dentist's chair where the dentist, the producers brought for the challenge, was standing beside the chair without feeling her chest tighten up. No way, man. That little pick alone is deadly. I don't want to be anywhere near it. Izzy yells back before Heather sighs as she turns to the dentist. Do you really need the pick and mirror? Heather asks while the dentist shakes his head. Truthfully no, but her fear does relate to the excavator and mouth mirror. If anything, I'd say it has to at least enter her mouth and check her teeth, nothing else. The dentist says. Heather sighs and looks up at Izzy with a glare. Get down here, crazy girl, or so help me, if we lose because of you, I make sure you're voted out next. Heather yells. Hearing this, Izzy slowly and carefully as she got down from the ceiling as if waiting for the dentist to yell, psych, and jump at her, and saw he wasn't moving from his spot. She reluctantly moves to the chair, sits down, rests her head on the headrest, and looks at the dentist. Just having it in her mouth was scary, but she was putting a lot on the line right now. Oh okay, but I swear if you use it I'm fighting back. Izzy yells before sitting down on the chair. Her threat causes the dentist to sweat drop before he begins his procedure on her mouth. Izzy gripped the chair's armrests as strong as she could as the dentist moved his tools around in her mouth, struggling to stay calm while she kept her eyes tightly shut. She didn't pay much mind to the fact that she snapped off one of the armrests, the feeling of the dentist's tools leaving her mouth raising her spirits instantly. There, done. You need dental work as you have a few cavities, but that'll be something you get after this, Chef told her before she bolted and threw the broken armrest at him out of fear. Never. Izzy screams before she ran away from them, leaving Chef glaring at her as she left. And with that, the Gophers are on the board. Chris yells, chuckling at the odd ending of things while the Gophers cheer, finally happy they had a point on the scoreboard. Gophers, 1 out of 10, base, 1 out of 10. Bridget's challenge. So, I have to stay here for 6 hours, alone? Bridget asks as she sits on a log. She, Chris, and some of her teammates were in the middle of the forest. Yep, that's all you have to do for your challenge. And don't think you can use the camera crew as company. They wouldn't be here, there are hidden cameras around this section of the forest to watch you. When the 6 hours are up, you'll hear an alarm go off, telling you that you're done, that is, if you can survive that long. Chris jokes before turning to the others. Say your goodbye as her challenge will begin in 1 minute. He says before looking down at his watch and starts the countdown. Just relax, Bridget. You got this. Just take deep breaths and have a calm mind. Naruto says, trying to calm her down. Yes, you can. There are no animals around this area of the forest and the sun will still be up during the 6 hours, you have nothing to worry about. Dawn assures Bridget, as she didn't scan any other animal around them. Yeah, Bridge, this is easy for you. Jeff says, bending down to Bridget's eye level and smiling at her. why you think I can do this? Bridget asks, and the person who they never expected to encourage her, speaks. You did great in the forest during the last challenge. If you can do that, you can do it again. Eva says. This causes everyone else to turn to her, staring at her shocked, but this quickly changes as Eva turns to her and glares at them. What? She hisses out, daring them to comment. And nothing. Thanks guys. I'll do my best. Bridget says, but her tone betrayed her. Before she could do anything else, Chris steps forward. Okay, guys. Time's up. Let's alone Bridget with her thoughts alone. Chris says. The base hear this and nod as they start leaving the area, but they wave Bridget goodbye and she does the same. But when she saw them disappear through the tree line, she stops waving and looked around. 6 hours, I can do this, I can do this. Bridget stutters, trying to calm herself down. Bridget's challenge, to be continued. Cody's challenge. We cut to Chris and Cody as they were in another section of the forest, not too far from where Bridget was sitting with something in front of the two. It was a makeshift bomb made of out trash cans, filled to the brim with trash and C4, and there was a timer on the bomb. Alright Cody, this garbage bomb is going off in exactly 10 minutes. Everything you need to know to defuse it are on these schematic blueprints. Chris explains to the teen while tossing him a rolled-up blue sheet of paper. Cody catches the sheet of paper and unrolls it before cringing at how blueprints made no sense to him. Wait. No way, I can't do this. Cody yells, clinging to the schematics and holding them close to his chest while Chris chuckles a bit. Then I suggest you find a safe place to hide, brah, later dude. Chris says before he starts to walk off. Wait, you're not going to watch? Cody asks since he thought Chris had to be there to declare this challenge completed when, or rather if he did disarm the bomb. No way. That's a live bomb, dude. Plus, it's rigged with fireworks to go off if you disarm it, plus the lack of explosion is another clear indicator of whether or not you disarmed it or not. Come on guys, let's get out of here before he snips the wrong wire and gets us coated in trash. Chris tells the camera crew to come with him as they leave Cody there. Cody's challenge, to be continued. Heather's challenge. We cut to the amphitheater where both teams were at their respective stands, looking at the stage where Heather was as she was about to face her fear. The mean girl of the Gophers was face to face with a sumo wrestler who looked at her with a fierce expression while Heather stood in place, frozen and shaking in place. Suddenly, the sumo wrestler screams and runs toward Heather at full force. Seeing this, Heather reacts. The sumo wrestler doesn't see her on the ground in a ball, cowering in fear before it was too late. He trips over Heather and falls off the stage before bouncing away into the forest, even bouncing off a tree. Heather sees that the sumo wrestler had left and she sighs in relief as she unrolls herself from her ball stance and lands on her butt, thinking that she had won her challenge and earned her team a point, but Chris informed her she didn't earn a point since she didn't face her fear and rolled into a ball and made the sumo wrestler. This causes the girl to groan in disappointment as she failed her challenge. Gophers, 1 out of 10, base, 1 out of 10. Back with Owen's challenge. Meanwhile, in the air. Owen was still screaming in utter terror as the plane flies above the camp. Performing daring and dangerous stunts in the air, further pushing Owen to scream. Owen's challenge, to be continued. Gwen's challenge. At the beach, some of the members from both teams watched ere a mock grave was made as a bunch of sand was dug up with a stone resembling a tombstone placed in front of the hole with a timer on it set to 5 minutes. Inside the hole was a glass box with Gwen lying down inside with a walkie-talkie while Chris was busy burying her in the sand. Trent was looking down at her and reassured the terrified Goth, "There's enough air for an hour." Trent tells Gwen, trying to calm her down from this. "You only need to do 5 minutes. As long as we decide to dig you up." Chris jokes as he places more sand on top of Gwen's box. "Not funny, Chris." Gwen snaps at the host. "Sheesh. Chris says, rolling his eyes a bit. Take a pill. He says while burying her with more sand. I'll be listening the whole time. Trent says as he holds up his walkie-talkie which was connected to the one Gwen had. Just yell for me if you panic and I'll dig you right up. He says while Gwen nods, agreeing to the plan. Okay, gang. Say goodbye to Gwen as she leaves us and the world of the living. Chris jokes, causing Gwen to glare at him. Goodbye cruel world. Gwen grimly says and Trent closes the glass box completely as she is getting buried alive. Challenge, to be continue. DJ's challenge. We return to the amphitheater, where the next challenge was about to be done. DJ, who was tasked with facing his greatest fear. The gentle giant was on stage, standing purely frozen. He stood there with a fish tank that had what could be called, the island's smallest snake. All he had to do, was let the snake crawl on his hand and pet its head. Hey, you can do this buddy. Duncan yells, trying to encourage DJ to do it. Yeah man, go for it. Naruto yells, following Duncan's lead to encourage DJ. DJ looks at the tank and sees the snake inside, looking at him. He gets nervous and was about to do something when he sees the snake blink at him, and this causes him to skip back a few steps in terror. It blinked at me. DJ yells, frightened. It means it likes you. Katie yells. She. The snake is a she. Dawn says, seeing the snake while Courtney just rolls her eyes at this sight. Oh come on DJ, it's the smallest snake ever. Courtney yells, getting fed up with this. Yeah, it's slimy and scaly and slithery, DJ whines as he continues to cower and recoil away from the snake. We need this point, DJ. The Gophers are in the lead and our numbers don't mean as much. SCK it up. Courtney yells, and her yelling causes DJ to cower and jump behind the tank before he jumps away from that as well, realizing the snake is still there. Courtney frowns before noticing most of her teammates shaking their heads at her. What? We really can't afford to lose. All he needs, is a push. She tries to justify before Dawn gets up from the bleachers, walks over to the stage, and looks at the frightened giant. DJ. You have nothing to worry about. She will not harm you in any way. All you have to do is be calm and just accept her. Dawn says and DJ looks at her. And how do I do that? DJ asks and Dawn smiles at him. Go to her, hold out your hand to her, and she'll do the rest. Dawn says. DJ looks back at her for a bit, taking in her words before taking a deep breath as he calms his nerves. He starts to step forward, slowly walking to the tank with his eyes shut since in his mind if he didn't see it he wouldn't stop short of it and freak out. He holds his hand out as a way to guide him to the tank until he feels it and sticks his hand into it. He repeats his thoughts in his mind before he stops when he feels something bump against his finger and realizes it is the snake. At first, he wanted to scream but stopped himself when he realized it wasn't slimy at all, getting him to open his eyes to see the cute snake now sitting on top of his finger. Now that he could see it he did have to admit it was rather cute. Woo! Yeah DJ. Way to go, several base teammates cheer while Courtney smirks back at them. See? All he needed was a little push, she said, happy that Dawn was able to help push him to overcome it and earn the team another point, putting the two teams in a tie. The team was about to leave and go back to their cabin when Chris arrives and stops them. Hold on guys. I need to stop one of you since the next challenge is up next. Chris says as the base looks at him. Chris then turns to the resident aura reader, Dawn, you're up since we've. What? Dawn stutters, as fear begins to come onto her. But how? Look at where we are. We're surrounded by nature for kilometers. She yells, while pointing at the area, it was impossible to cut her off from nature. But Chris just grins. Don't worry, we've thought and prepared for everything. Chris says as he brings out a walkie-talkie from his pocket and turns it on. "Bring it in, boys." He yells into the walkie-talkie. Suddenly, everyone jumps at the sounds of a helicopter's blades cutting through the air. They look up and see an approaching helicopter coming from the horizon while carrying a wooden cart with it. The aircraft arrives where the team was and lowers close to the ground where it detects the wooden cart from its cables and the cart drops to the ground, kicking up dust that blocks whatever was inside the cart from being seen with sounds of the wooden cart breaking apart. The aircraft then flies away, causing more dust to kick up and blocking not only the base from seeing what it dropped but also the viewers. Eventually, the dust clears away and the team looks at what was dropped off. To say they were shocked would be an understatement. Dawn's challenge. Dawn's pupils turn to mere dots as she stares at a large metallic cube as Chris walks up to a door that is located in front of the box. Opening the door of the box, Chris revealed inside the box were a bunch of different machines left on and making beeping sounds of various pitches while a cold breeze was seeping out of the box and a large TV was attached to the wall of the box and a chair was located in the middle of the box with a pair of large headphones were on the chair. Chris turned to Dawn and saw she had her jaw dropped. "Dawn, for your challenge you must spend 5 hours locked inside this metal box with constantly turned on machines while watching a documentary on the TV while using the headphones to listen to a documentary." Chris explains as Dawn starts to shake. "Complete isolation from anything natural. Not even a single blade of grass inside. That is your challenge," he says as Dawn makes a loud gulp in response and her shaking only got worse. Not even 0001. Dawn violently stutters and Chris just laughs before he shakes his head. "Nope," Chris says before he takes out a pair of keys and starts tossing them in the air. "If you decide to chicken out, there's a key there on the metal desk that'll unlock the door. At least I think that's the right key," he says, stopping his tossing and looks at the keys to see which one of them was the right one. "Confessional, Naruto." "Seriously, dude?" Naruto says with a completely unamused expression and tone. "Not cool," the red-hair/blonde says while shaking his head. "End confessional. It's okay, Dawn, this is a challenge. You just have to focus on that and you'll get through this quickly. You can do this." Naruto encourages Dawn while placing his hand on her shoulder. This makes her blush and see he believes in her to do this. Now able to calm her nerves, Dawn makes her way to the box. She tries to be brave but her face has an expression of complete fear, which makes Naruto's heart feel like it is being stabbed by a hot katana. She stops in front of the box and stares at it before turning back to her team. "I know you got this," he says and the others start encouraging her to do it. "Oh, okay." Dawn stutters, gulping again as she turns back to the box and stares at the inside of the box before taking in a deep breath. "Here, I go." With that, Dawn walks inside the box, sits on the chair, and places the headphones to her ears. Seeing her doing this, Chris immediately slams the door shut and locks it up. "Don't worry, Dawn," Naruto yells as he puts a hand on the metal box. He hoped Dawn could hear him from in there. "I promise I'll be here for the entire time," he yells. "Actually, Naruto, you won't," Chris tells Naruto, making the rocker flinch and slowly turns to the host of the show and sees he has his SHT-ing grin. "I have a good friend of mine waiting and he's pretty eager to meet you." Naruto looks at Chris for a bit before he asks. "Please, tell me this dude is an ex-con wanting to fight." Chris simply shakes his head leading Naruto to gulp and slump down a bit. "Great," he mutters, feeling dread at what was coming. "But before we get to that, gotta take care of a few more things," Chris says with Naruto following while hugging himself. Dawn's challenge, to be continued. Gophers, 1 out of 10, base, 2 out of 10. Trent's challenge. Back on the beach, Gwen was still buried under the sand with 3 minutes left on the timer and Trent was lying down right next to the fake grave with his walkie-talkie in his hand. "You still alive in there?" Trent speaks into the walkie-talkie. Only 3 more minutes. And then you'll dig me up, right? Gwen quickly asks, her tone speaks just how frightened and how freaked out she is. I promise. Trent reassures the goth in a calm tone. I need some kind of distraction. Gwen tells Trent while taking deep breaths. Tell me a story. Why do you hate mimes so much? She asks. Trent sighs. He had a feeling that this was going to be brought up and he could see that Gwen was freaking out and needed a distraction. If it would help calm Gwen down, then he would do it 100 times if needed. My mom took me to this carnival once when I was 4. Trent begins telling the story as he stands up from the sand and leans on the tombstone. So I could see the elephants. I was stoked. He says. Yeah. Gwen fearfully lets out as all she could see from her point of view was the sand she was buried in. Shen's this distraction. I was so busy watching them that I lost her for a minute. Trent continues as he starts walking around, not noticing someone is coming up to him from behind. I called out, but when I turned, all I could see was the horrible white face with black lips pretending to be me. I screamed and tried to run, but every time I turned around, he was there, doing this creepy fake run and scream routine. Just as he was explaining, Trent felt someone poke his shoulder. Looking back, and doing a classic invisible box routine, Trent comes face to face with his worst fear, a mime. Eh! Trent screams, dropping his walkie-talkie, and quickly starts running away with the mime quickly chasing after him. Back at the grave, the walkie-talkie Trent dropped turns on, and Gwen's voice comes through the device. Trent? Trent, are you there? Gwen's voice cries from the walkie-talkie. As Trent runs with the mime chasing after them, the two pass by Chris and Naruto as the host has a megaphone and calls Trent with it. Come on Trent, he came here just for you. Chris tells Trent as the guitarist and mime pass by him again. Just ask him to leave BR and you're done. What? Trent screamed as he came to a sudden stop along with the mime. Seriously? I have to talk to him. Yep. Chris yells. Trent grumbles at this before seeing the mime copying his actions, all while looking at him and this. This causes Trent to scream and run off again, with the mime following him shortly after. Back with Chris, he lowers his megaphone and looks at his watch, and sees the time. Okay, we've got 2 minutes before Gwen's done. Chris says before turning to Naruto who is silent. Naruto, you're coming with me. We have a birthday party to get to. He says with a happy tone and Naruto just groans. Great. Naruto mutters as he follows Chris to where his challenge would be, hoping that this. Trent's challenge, to be continued. Naruto's challenge. I swear if that thing touches me, I'm punching it. Naruto says as he sits on a chair and scoots as far back as he possibly can be as far away from the horrifying sight in front of him. A large child-free bear dancing in front of him. When Chris said, birthday party, he meant it as there were balloons held down by tying them to rocks, a table with a party tablecloth, and he even had a party hat on his head. As Naruto was forced into this form of hell, some of the base and Gophers came up and saw what was happening. Nick. I didn't know it was your birthday. Happy birthday. Lindsay cheers as she goes up to Naruto and hugs him which, due to him sitting down and her standing up, resulted in her melons pressing against his head while she hugged it. It's not my birthday, also my name is Naruto. Naruto stammers out before someone eventually pulls Lindsay away from him. My birthday is October 10th by the way, he clarifies while he clears his throat to shake off the whole fact he just had a pair of rather large melons that were contained in a low-cut shirt pressed up against his face, while also fighting back the blush he had on his face. Wow, 10 out of 10, that's a surprise. Lashana says as they didn't know about that fact of Naruto. As I was saying. Naruto, your challenge is to spend 15 minutes here for a private birthday party with your own private Chucky. If you leave you lose and yes, punching or even attacking the friendly bear would result in a loss. Have fun. Chris sings out as he leaves, making Naruto glare at him heavily while the others start leaving too. Some of his teammates. I know you can do this, just like you said to Dawn, just focus on it being a challenge. Courtney encourages him, patting him on the back before she hurries off before some guys come over. So how did they feel? Duncan asks with Jeff and Harold beside him before a hand lands down on his shoulder and a throat clears behind them. The trio turns and sees Eva glare at them with a red aura around her. I think you boys should catch up with the others. Eva threatens as she cracks her knuckles. This gets the three boys to quickly run off. Naruto jumps a bit when she turns and glares at him before it lessens to a soft expression. Stay focused and strong. You got this. She mutters, patting his head before she walks off. Naruto didn't have much time to dwell on it before a bunch of confetti hit him in the face, making him turn back to the bear with a flat face to see it had a cupcake in its hand and was holding out to him. Goddamn mascot, this was a lot easier with others around. Naruto thought with a groan before he went back to gripping the chair to fight the urge to run. Naruto's challenge, to be continued. Back with Trent's challenge. We cut back to the beach where we see Trent continue to attempt to evade the mime only for the mime to mirror everything he did and stay right on his heels. Trent groans as he skidded to a stop, turning around to try and stall for time to find a way to get rid of the mime only for the mime to start doing its stuck-in-a-box routine. There's no wall there, man. Stop being creepy. Trent yells, but the mime just continues its routine at it. Trent frantically looks around for anything to get away from the mime before he notices the docks and books it off towards them. Trent's challenge, to be continued. Duncan's challenge. While Trent was busy with his challenge, we cut to the base and the next up to face their fear for the team was none other than Duncan. Except for Naruto, Bridget, and Dawn, all of the killer base and Chris were there to watch as Duncan, with Courtney next to him, was looking right in front of him and saw that a mew 2 yards away, was a cardboard cutout of Celine Dion. Duncan was frozen in place as Courtney spoke. She's pretty. She's nice. Courtney reassured the delinquent in a gentle tone. Just one hug and you're done. Chris says with a snap of his fingers. That looks really, real, man. Duncan speaks to Courtney with a fearful tone. He gulps loudly, while his legs shake a little. Hey. Courtney put a reassuring hand on Duncan's shoulder, making him turn to her and saw she had a gentle look on her face. It's okay if you can't do it. Duncan takes a deep breath as he looks between Courtney and the standee of Celine Dion. He then looks at his team and saw they were encouraging him. Letting out a deep sigh, Duncan takes Courtney's hand and says. Alright, I'll try. F for the team. Courtney cheers Duncan on as the delinquent takes another deep breath, and runs full speed towards the cutout and proceeds to pick it up and hug it. His team cheers as Duncan earned the base their third point. Courtney suddenly runs up to Duncan and envelopes him in a hug. Duncan. You're awesome. Courtney cheers for him as Duncan wraps a single arm around her. Ha! I did it. Duncan said with a smile. Courtney then leans in closer to Duncan, but then realizes what she is doing and quickly separates from him as the rest of the team comes up to Duncan and cheers for him. His actions earn the base another point, and finally put them in the lead. Gophers, 1 out of 10, base, 3 out of 10. Trent's challenge. We return to Trent as he runs down the docks. He doesn't hesitate to leap into the water, submerging back to the surface and smiling as the mime stops at the edge of it. Woohoo! What's the matter, mime? Can't swim? Trent says before the mime smiles at him and takes a deep breath as if he were ready to dive in after him. Seeing this, Trent quickly thinks of something to stop. Why your makeup will run, Trent points out, making the mime stop diving into the water and think about his words before he nods solemnly and walks away. Yes. 1 point to the Gophers, please. The guitarist cheers before Chris walks over to the edge of the docks, looks at him and shakes his head. Sorry, but that's not how it works, dude. The challenge was to talk to him and calmly get him to stop chasing you. You instead ran around like a chicken with its head cut off and dove into the water. Yes, you got it to stop chasing you, but not by facing your fear, dude. That means, no point for your team. Chris explains to him, making Trent yell in frustration before pulling himself out of the water. Great, now I have to go change clothes, Trent grumbles as he swims off to the dock and climbs onto it so he can walk off to the cabins and dry off. Wait a moment before changing, as I think you'll want to see this next one. Chris tells him with a smirk as he notices a perfect opportunity for the next challenge while he pulls out a purple remote with a joystick. Gophers, 1 out of 10, base, 3 out of 10. Jeff's challenge. Now everyone, Chris tells some of the members from both teams as he walks over to a chair, sits on it, and looks at the remote in his hands. He looks at Jeff, who was lounging on a chair, was relaxing in the sun. Watch Jeff closely, as I feel the forecast is about to call for some localized hail. He tells them with a chuckle. He starts using the remote for something before everyone watches as a small black cloud starts to move around towards Jeff. Jeff cracks open his eyes as he feels the sun was being blocked by something, confused to see a cloud so close above him before it starts to rumble. The second hail started to fall on him. Jeff instantly shot up from his chair and started screaming, trying to block the bale as best he could as it kept hitting him before he ran away from the cloud. But he soon realizes that even running away wasn't working as the cloud followed him, always right above him and continuously pelting him with hail. Just stay still for a minute and let it hit you and you win. If you keep running it isn't going to count. Chris yells out after him while the others watch. Aw, that cloud is following him. It's like his own baby cloud. I want one too, Lindsay whines out before she starts waving towards the cloud. Here, cloudy cloudy cloud, she sang out, trying to coax it over as it kept following Jeff. Oh, can you make it go higher, that way it'll hit him harder? Heather asked, getting Chris to look at her in shock. You are one sick girl, but yeah, he said with a chuckle as he made it go higher, increasing the speed at which the hail hit him due to gravity, which only caused Jeff to freak out more and more. It was obvious that Jeff had failed his challenge. Gophers, 1 out of 10, base, 3 out of 10. Back with Naruto's challenge. Naruto felt like he was officially in hell. His whole body was screaming at him to run every time the bear mascot put on a show and tried to get him to do it along. He had never been this close to the DMN bear for this long, given he often tried to steer clear of him ever since he was a kid. Plus, the thing that was the worst for him right now, was that his timer had only shown he was at this for 3 good minutes. He desperately wanted to check on Dawn to see if she was safe, but he also couldn't risk losing his challenge. He starts to think about Dawn and how she was doing in her challenge. It has been nearly 30 minutes since she was put into that box and he was hoping she was doing well. So how are you holding up? Chris asks with a smirk while he comes to check up on Naruto alone. The teen looks at him. Doing fine, man. Doing fine. Naruto says, but his tone was strained, just showing how much willpower he was putting into doing this challenge. He looks behind Chris and notices Trent was walking down to the cabins but sees he was wet. What the? He thought, wondering what happened. Hey, what happened to Trent? He asks. Oh, he ran from his mime and jumped into the lake to dodge the mime, but that cost him them and the point. Chris says, and Naruto frowns. And did he dig out Gwen? Naruto asks. Nope, he got distracted by a mime. She's still down there. Chris says as Naruto's eyes widen at this. Trent left Gwen alone. He had to do something since he didn't know how long she had been down there. What? She's still down. Naruto yells. He shoots up from his seat and grabs Chris by his shoulders. Aren't you going to go and dig her out? He yells as Chris calmly removes Naruto's hands from his shoulders. Well, you could go dig her up, but it'll cost you the challenge. Chris suggests and Naruto grits his teeth. One of his friends was buried alive and he had no idea how long she was down her and who knows how much air she had left. He thinks of a way to. How about this? What if I hug the DMN bear and I can finish this stupid challenge early? Naruto asks, which got Chris to gain a massive smile. Oh dude, you are so on. But it has to be for 10 seconds and if you let go before the 10 seconds are up, no points. Chris tells him, raising the stakes to make it even more difficult for Naruto. Damn it. Fine. Count them for me. Naruto growls out before he rushes over to Chucky and hugs the mascot. He fights back at every bit of his body, screaming at him to stop and to run, while also doing his best not to try and choke the DMN thing while it hugs him back. His body starts to sweat profoundly and after what feels like an eternity, Chris finishes his count. And done. Great job Naruto. Chris announces as Naruto pushes Chucky away and rushes off like he was being chased by something towards the beach. Chris watches him run off and laughs to himself. God, the drama is going to be so great today. He thought with a smirk as he knew he made the right decision in not reminding Trent about Gwen before he walked off to the cabins to change. He starts running after Naruto while pulling out his walkie-talkie and speaks to Chef to get things ready for Eva's challenge. Naruto was busy running toward the beach and he spotted the tombstone and saw the timer flashing at midnight, showing she completed the challenge. Naruto immediately got to work as he grabs a shovel that rested near the tombstone, and started digging away. I'm coming Gwen, just hold on. Naruto growls out before he eventually uncovers her case and quickly smashes the top of it, freeing Gwen. Naruto was about to ask her if she was okay when he suddenly let out an oomph as Gwen burst up and tackles him to the ground and held him in a tight hug. He frowns as he could feel his shirt getting wet and her body shaking as she cried a bit. Shoo, it's all okay now, he whispered to her as he pets her head and held her, sitting back on the sand. I've been trying to reach Trent but I got nothing from him. Gwen stutters into his chst while she continued to hug him to console herself. He looks around and spots something near them. And I know why. Naruto says, he grabs the item near them and holds it up to Gwen. He got ambushed by a mime thanks to Chris. And in a panic state, he ran and dropped this here. He says, showing her the walkie-talkie. Oh. Gwen says, as she got that Trent's fear drove him to do what he did but it still was hurt that he did that. She looks at Naruto. How did you know I was still buried? She asks. I saw Trent walking back to the cabins but I didn't see you. I asked Chris what happened and he told me what happened so, I had to go to you and dig you out but Chris warned me if I did, I would have failed my challenge so, I decided I had to bite the bullet more or less. He says to her which only got a raised eyebrow from her. How do you bite a bullet with a mascot bear? Gwen asks, almost afraid to know just what did he do but was still curious. I hugged him. Naruto tells her with a shiver as if remembering it was uncomfortable. Sorry if I'm sweaty, 'cause of it, my body didn't like it since I wanted to punch that stupid bear. He jokes, getting her to chuckle before she rubs his arms. Thank you for coming to get me like this, and, sorry for making you do that just to get me out. Gwen tries to apologize before he interrupts her, by wrapping her in a hug and surprising her with this. Hey, it's okay Gwen. You were in danger and needed to get out. I consider you my friend. And as my friend, I'd go far for my friends. Naruto says. Gwen's eyes widen after hearing what he said. Why you mean that? Gwen asks and Naruto nods. Yeah, I do. Like I do consider most of everyone here as my friends too. Naruto says. Gwen looks at him for a bit before she wraps her arms around Naruto and returns the hug. Thank you. Gwen stutters while placing her head on his chst, she was starting to feel better. Chris arrives at the beach and sees Gwen hugging Naruto and sees the timer on the tombstone flashing, showing her time was up. Oh good. She's alright. She's alright. Chris yells, with relief in his tone. Some members of both teams arrive at the grave since they did see Chris run toward, and Courtney sees Naruto hugging Gwen and jumps to the thought that he bailed out from his challenge. She runs to him and separates him from Gwen before grabbing his shoulders and starting to shake him. Naruto. Don't tell me you bailed from your challenge. Courtney shouts. She continued to shake him, and he started to get dizzy. No. I didn't. Naruto yells, and this makes Courtney stop shaking him. He falls to the ground and lies on the sand while his eyes spin from the dizziness he was experiencing. Huh? Courtney utters confused, and that when Chris steps forward. Naruto did pass his challenge. He even upped the ante when he offered to hug Chucky the friendly bear for 10 seconds so he could end his challenge and come to dig Gwen up. Plus, since Gwen did stay in her grave with her time finished. So Gophers have earned a point thanks to Gwen, and the base earned another point thanks to Naruto. Chris says, and the two teams cheer as they go over to their teammates. Alright. Great job, Naruto. I knew you could do it. Courtney cheers as she hugs the rocker while he shakes his head, to get the foxes he was seeing out of his vision. And no problem, guess I needed a little push. Naruto says while laughing a little. Gwen. Everyone turn their heads to the left and sees Trent, now in dry clothes, rushing over to the grave with a worried expression. He arrives at the mock grave and sees Gwen was out of the grave, and lets out a sigh of relief. Oh man, you're alright. Look, I'm so sorry for leaving you buried alive like that. This mime came out of nowhere and I ran from him. I only remembered about you after I saw some of the team going to the beach. He apologizes with his hands together. Gwen doesn't say anything and just looks at Trent with an enraged expression, but it drops, whatever. She says as she stands up and starts leaving the area, leaving Trent there in confusion. He was about to run after her to further explain himself when. Boom. What the hell? Duncan yells as they see and hear an explosion in the distance. Chris turns and sees smoke coming from the area he left Cody and realizes what happened. If I had to guess, I'd say Cody just blew himself up. Ha ha ha. Chris laughs. Now, we better go and check to see if Cody tried to disarm the bomb or ran away and hid. He says with a smirk since the bomb did indicate that Cody's challenge had ended. You guys go on, I'm going to go and check up with Dawn and see how she's doing. Naruto says, and before anyone could say anything, he bolts toward the amphitheater to go and check up on Dawn. Run like the wind, bro. Run like the wind. Chris yells for a bit before he chuckles and turns to the others. Now, let's go and check up on the codster and see what happened in his challenge. The host says as he leads everyone to where the explosion went off. Trent stays as he looks back to where Gwen had walked off to and saw she had vanished. He frowns a bit before he walks in the direction where she went in search of her and to explain his actions. Gophers, 2 out of 10, base, 4 out of 10. Bridget's challenge. We cut to the forest where we see Bridget walking around the area. Chris and the others left her, all while looking around with a nervous expression. Okay, Bridge. You can do this. You only got. Bridget says as she stops walking and looks at the watch Chris gave her before her challenge started to see how much time she had left, 4 hours to go. Why yeah, you can do this. You can do this. She says, trying to psyche herself up as she resumes walking around the area, even picking up her pace a little, not wanting to venture out and start getting more paranoid than she already was. Just then, the sounds of a crow start to caw up in a tree, startling Bridget before she looks up to the sky and glares at the tree. Oh, don't even bother trying to scare me, producer people. She yells, even putting her hand to her hips while keeping her glare, hoping she was glaring at a hidden camera and the producers could see her. Suddenly, she hears an explosion go off near her, causing her to jump and start frantically looking around, wondering what just happened. She starts hearing footsteps approaching the area she's in while some grunts for pain. Wondering what was that, Bridget looks around to see what was it before spotting something coming toward her. She backs away a bit before tipping on a fallen log and watches as the figure approaches closer to her before she sees someone with their entire body and face covered in trash and was walking toward her with his arms out. Seeing this, Bridget's flight or fight reflex activates and she screams in terror before she shoots up from the ground and bolts it out of the area as the figure continues to walk before tripping over the log and falling face first onto the ground. The others arrive at the area and see the figure lying on the ground while not seeing Bridget anywhere and realize what happened. Well, looks like Bridget failed her challenge. Chris says. They soon hear groaning coming from the figure and see him lifting his head, and everyone sees as some of the trash covering the figure's face slides off to reveal it was Cody. Judging from Cody's condition, he either ran out of time with the bomb or tried to disarm it and snapped the wrong wire. I'll have to review the footage to see what happened, he says. An intern arrives with a camera and hands it to Chris, who looks at the footage and sees what happened during Cody's challenge, and he was surprised by what was on the footage. Guess Cody did try to disarm it. That means he gets the point for his team, he says, showing the teams the camera and the footage which showed Cody looking at the blueprint while he was busy cutting a wire, but he cut the wrong, which resulted in the explosion from earlier. What? But he blew himself up. How can he get the win? Courtney yells. The challenge was for him to try and disarm the bomb or run and hide. If he did run and hide, he would have failed and wouldn't have earned his team the point. But he did try to disarm it. He failed to disarm it, but him trying to was enough for the point. So, the Gophers have for now, he says, and the Gophers cheer while Courtney just groans from disappointment and runs her hand down her face. Confessional, Bridget. Actually, I'd like to thank the producers for helping me conquer my fear. You guys taught me it was all in the mind. I'm proud to learn that, after realizing I failed my challenge. Bridget yells as she slaps her forehead. End confessional. Well, that's that. Time to move on to the next challenge, Chris declares. So, who's next? Eva grumbles out, only to see Chris staring at her with a big smile, and she starts to pale. Oh no, she utters, and Chris eagerly nods. Oh yes. Let's move to the mess hall, shall we? Since that's where the next challenge, Chris says as he walks to the mess hall with the others following suit, while some pick up Cody and rush him over to the medical tent to get treated and cleaned up. Gophers, 3 out of 10, base, 4 out of 10. Back with Dawn's challenge. Hold on, Dawn. I'm coming. Naruto yells in his mind as he rushes toward the amphitheater. He hears screams of terror above him, and he looks up to see the island's plane and sees it performing a series of barrel rolls, which results in more screams echoing through the air. He realized it was Owen who was screaming. He ignores that and continues his run to the amphitheater. Thankfully, after 2 minutes of running, he makes it to the area and spots the metal box right in the middle. Yes, he yells. Naruto reaches the box and starts banging on it, hoping Dawn would hear him. Dawn! Dawn, are you okay in there? Naruto yells, but nothing came from the box, and this greatly worries him. Dawn! He yells, concerned about Dawn, when suddenly, I can't take it anymore. Naruto flinches at the loud, yet muffled voice coming from the box. Suddenly, he hears banging on the door, coming from the inside of the box. Let me out, let me out, let me out. Dawn screams, her tone sounding frantic. Hold on, Dawn. I'm letting you out. Naruto shouts before he scans the box for the keys to the door, and he thankfully spots them hanging off the door handle. Wasting no time, he grabs the keys and looks for the one he saw Chris use to lock Dawn in the lock. He finds the key and uses it to unlock the door and quickly opens the door, and he is introduced by a chill breeze coming out of the door. Dawn. Are you okay, Faye? He was saying, but he gets tackled by a green and light blonde blur to the floor. He lands on his back on the ground and wonders what hit him when he feels something. On his chest and small arms wrap around his neck. He looks down and sees Dawn, hugging him tightly. Dawn. Are you dash? He stops what he was about to ask when he sees Dawn lift her head to him and he silently gasps in shock at the state she was in. Her hair was frizzed up and beyond messy, her eyes were incredibly bloodshot, and her pale skin was much paler than it was before, to the point where it looked like her skin was snow white in tone and she was shaking violently. Dawn, are you okay? It was horrible, so horrible. Dawn manages to squeak out, even as she struggles to speak in her condition. What? What happened in there? Naruto asks, just wondering what the hell happened. So much pain, so much death, so quiet, so cold. Dawn mutters, confusing Naruto by what she said. Huh? Naruto utters. He looks to the inside of the box and saw just what was inside. There was a AC that was blasting out cold air and he saw a TV that was playing a video on animal hunting and meat slaughtering. He looks at the headphones and he had a feeling that they were connected to the TV, to make it worse for Dawn to watch. Oh Chris, you sick bastard. He thought, his eyes dimming in color as he was angry at the host and his cruel act against Dawn. But before he could plan out some payback, he feels Dawn beginning to shake once again. He quickly wraps his arms around her, sits up, and starts soothing the poor girl. Hey. Shoo, it's okay. It's okay. You're back outside. You're in nature and your feet are on the grass and earth once more. You're with nature again. He says as he runs his hand through her hair. This helped slightly as Dawn's shaking had calmed down a little. The two stay like this for a while as they hear the birds chirp around them, even some flying toward the two and land on the box and see Dawn and her state and were visibly worried. Do you feel better now? Naruto asks the petite nature girl and she nods a little. A little bit. Dawn stutters, her tone and posture was better than it was a few minutes ago but she still was shaking a little. Naruto sees this and thought about something that could cheer up Dawn and perhaps get her back to her usual self. And as if a light bulb appeared over his head and turned on, an idea sprung forth. Hey, do you want to go and play with DJ's pet rabbit, Bunny? Naruto asks. And after a while of no speaking, Dawn answers with a small nod. That would be nice. Dawn says and Naruto smiles. Yeah, let's go find DJ and ask if we can play with Bunny. Naruto says. Before Dawn could say anything or even stand up, Naruto stood up and lifted her and held her in his arms in a bridal style, and started walking to the cabins, hoping to find DJ there. Dawn is taken by surprise by this action but she couldn't help but feel warm and happy as she felt Naruto's aura. It was warm, bright, and filled with life. Even with that chaotic energy flowing through it, it was the perfect balance. Something she's never seen from someone outside her family. It was putting her at ease as she placed her head onto his chest, listened to his heartbeat, and closed her eyes as they made their way to the cabins. Gophers, 3 out of 10, base, 4 out of 10. Eva's challenge. What do I have to do? Eva asks, as she nervously looks around for a bit while she, Chris, and some of the members of both teams were at the docks. Chris instructed Eva to go and change into her swimsuit. She was on a platform that was stationed in the middle of the water near the docks where the others were standing, watching her. Naruto, Dawn, Gwen Trent, and Owen were not there to watch this due to known reasons. Oh, that's simple. All you have to do is last 5 minutes in the ring. Chris was saying before Eva cut him off. Easy. Eva says, confidently as she cracks her knuckles and rolls her neck. Seeing this, Chris continues. With a giant Pacific octopus. Chris finishes and this is where Eva stops cracking her bones and looks shocked. What? Eva stutters. Suddenly, the water starts to shake, which makes Eva have to balance herself on the platform. Something started emerging from the water and Eva's pupils dilated as she came face to face with a giant red and white octopus, looming over her while its tentacles moved up on the platform. There she is, campers, Betty the giant Pacific octopus. This type of octopi normally stands at a normal 6 feet, weighs an average of 10 to 71 kilograms, 22 to 156 pounds, and can lift and move objects that weigh around 318 kilograms, 700 pounds. But this one we have here for the challenge is way above Avenge. Betty here stands at a shocking 9 feet, weighs in at a record-breaking 90 kilograms, 198.4 pounds, and can lift things that weigh in around 452 kilograms, 996.4 pounds. She's a real record breaker, oh, and she's a prize fighter. Chris explains the stats on this octopus. That's almost a ton. Harold yells, shocked by the amount this giant octopus could lift. Nah, we had Betty cleared to fight safely. Like I was saying, Eva. All you have to do is wrestle and last 5 minutes in the ring against Betty here. If she pins you to the ground or throws you off the mat, you're out. So, good luck and try not to get bit by Betty. Her venom, while it won't kill you if you're treated fast, it'll paralyze you, and that's something you don't want. Chris says. He chuckles as he walks over to the lifeguard chair, climbs on top of it, and sits on it with a stopwatch in hand. Is this even safe? Courtney asks, feeling like this had to be not legal. Chris looks at her and grins. Relax, we had Betty sign the waivers before today. So everything is good. Chris says before he looks back at Eva, who was staring at Betty in shock and fear. Okay Eva, when you're ready, the challenge will start. He yells. Eva was staring at Betty, gulping loudly as she was getting extremely nervous about this. She looks at the tentacles and involuntary shivers, seeing how slimy they were. You got this Eva. Eva hears Courtney cheer and she turns to see her team cheer. Yeah, show that giant calamari who's boss. Duncan cheers, clapping his hands for her. You can do this Eva. DJ yells. Eva saw this and felt happy that her team believed she could do this. She smiles slightly and nods. Oh okay, I got this. Eva mutters to herself. She turns back to Betty and stares at Betty for a bit before she takes in a deep breath and exhales before shifting into a gecko wrestling stance. She looks determined. Go. She yells and Chris blows a single with. Eva and Betty got into what could be considered one of the best human versus nature fights captured on TV. Eva was able to deal damage to Betty with kicks, punches, and even bites to her tentacles and body. Betty was also fighting back against her human opponent, throwing punches with her tentacles, striking Eva in various parts of her body, and trying to grab her, but Eva evaded her attempts. They were at this stalemate for most of the fight until Betty successfully caught Eva in one of her tentacles and wraps her other tentacles around Eva's body and sticking her with her suckers. And Eva is caught. Will she be able to break out of Betty's hold or is she finished? Chris narrates the fight while eating some popcorn. Eva was struggling to break free from the octopus's grip. Come on Eva. You can break out of it. Her teammates continued to cheer her on, hoping she'd break out of the octopus's hold. Eva was trying to force her way out of the octopus's grip, but not only did the octopus's grip tighten at every attempt she made to break free, but she also shivered when she felt some of the tentacles start moving to places that were rather private, and she shivers some more, feeling how slimy they felt. Eva tries again to break free, but the grip Betty was applying was getting to the point where she couldn't. Eva felt one of the tentacles move to an area that caused her to blush and shiver once again, and this was the breaking point for her. I can't do this. Eva thought before turning to Chris and yells, I give. She yells. Chris hears her and blows a whistle, and this makes Betty stop what she was doing and drops Eva back to the mat, where she lands and sits up, having this defeated expression as she thought she failed her challenge. Hey, guess even the strongest can fall short. Heather says, taunting Eva for her epic fail. And Eva wins the base another point. Chris declares loudly, causing everyone on the dock and Eva to turn to him with an expression of confusion. Huh? Courtney utters, confused by what Chris said. What? Yeah, she won the base another point. Chris says. What? But she lost the fight to that dumb squid. Heather yells, not understanding how Eva earned her point when she gave up. Yes, while she did lose against Betty. The real challenge was for her to overcome her fear. The moment she started to fight, that was the moment she won the challenge. Chris explains. Then why did you let her continue to fight? Heather yells, furious by this as Chris just shrugs his shoulders. I felt that this episode needed some action. Chris says. And in hearing this, the base cheer loudly while Eva flops to the mat in relief as she looks up to the sky. Whoa! Way to go, Eva. Yeah, you are the man, girl, you know what I mean. Nice one, Eva. Eva heard her teammates cheer and congratulate her and she couldn't help but smile at it. Thanks guys. Eva whispers to herself. Happy that she won her challenge and had her team happy. She hears a commotion in the water and turns to see Betty lowering back into the water. Hey, you! She yells at Betty, stopping the giant Pacific octopus as it looks at her while Eva stands up and glares at it. Don't think you've won this. Next time we fight, there will be no time. We're going till one of us walks away. Eva yells at Betty, glaring at her with a determined expression. Betty looks at her for a bit before nodding and making a sound, signaling a confirmation of her challenge as it sinks into the water. To who knows where. Okay, let's take a little break and we'll move on to the next challenge. Chris yells, leaving the campers by the dock as Chef goes out to go get Eva and bring her to her team so they could cheer for her properly. Gophers, 3 out of 10, base, 5 out of 10. Owen's challenge. After 2 hours of flying and performing aerial tricks, the plane descends to the island before coming to a stop near the cabins. Owen bursts out of the aircraft and runs far from the plane before falling to his knees and starts kissing the ground. He had earned the Gophers a point. Gophers, 4 out of 10, base, 5 out of 10. Lindsay's and Katie's challenge. Some hours passed and the time they were supposed to wear their ugly wig had ended. Lindsay and Katie met up in the washrooms and took off their wigs. Upon doing this, the two complimented one another for how appealing they were since they seemingly forgot one another's beauty due to the challenge. This made them earn a point for each of their team. Gophers, 5 out of 10, base, 6 out of 10. Tyler's challenge. After the break, everyone, minus Naruto, Dawn, Cody, Trent, and Gwen, met Chris at an area not too far from the campsite where the last challenge was about to take place. A fenced area where a small brown box with holes on the box was inside the fenced area. Alright everyone, after a day of high-tension actions and drama, we're in the 9th inning. Tyler. Chris starts, calling out the athlete to approach him as Tyler walks over to Chris and leans on the fence. Chris looks at Tyler and begins speaking. Alright Tyler, for your challenge, it's pretty DMN simple. You need to get into this pen for 3 minutes with these chickens. The host explains as he lifts the lid off the brown box to reveal a hen and 2 baby chicks sitting inside it. Come on Tyler, you can do it, dude. Owen yells, trying to encourage his teammate while Duncan on the other hand just chuckles. Yeah, unless of course, you're chicken. Duncan says while flapping his arms like wings. Trying to goad Tyler into proving him wrong but I'm not too sure we're getting anywhere with this one. Chris mutters with a frown. The reason why he says this is because Tyler was inside the pen but he was sitting on the ground in the fetal position and was rocking back and forth, facing away from the chickens as he refuses to even look in the general direction of them. I mean, sure he's in the pen but if he doesn't even look at the chickens in the 3 minutes, it won't count. He adds before Heather walks up to the side of the pen. Come on, you scaredy cat. Just look at the stupid birds and win us this point. Since this is the last challenge and we need this to tie the game. Heather yells, trying to get Tyler to just do it, but it doesn't work since he was still rocking back and forth in the fetal position. That's not actually true. Chris says, grabbing everyone's attention as he felt this challenge was a bust. He walks past Tyler and looks at everyone else. We've got one more challenge set up. He says. What? But who? Courtney asks, knowing that everyone was done with their challenge. She sees Chris looking at her with a grin and realizes what he was saying. Wait, you mean, me? But, that can't be right, I never said my fear. She says. You didn't have to. We're always watching you and your reactions. Chris says with a grin as Courtney's eyes slowly widen. Everyone thought back to last night and what reaction Chris was talking about before remembering how Courtney reacted when Beth offered her the green jelly. Wait, you mean to tell me, you're afraid for green jelly? Bridget asks as Courtney just lowers her head in shame. Aha! I knew it. Didn't I tell you guys they were eavesdropping on us? Lindsay tells the others, recalling what was said in the morning. Yeah, so Courtney. You ready to win it for your team? Chris asks the CIT, who just gulps loudly, and Chris takes that as a yes. Great, now campers, follow me to the last challenge of the day. He instructs the others as they follow him to where was this final challenge located. Leaving Tyler in the pen. Courtney could only feel dread running through her body as she could only imagine what. Gophers, 5 out of 10, base, 6 out of 10. Courtney's challenge. And she was to feel that dread. Chris had led her and everyone else to about a 50-foot high dive, right into a pool of green jelly. The same color of the jelly Courtney rejected last night. Chef was busy stirring the jelly in the pool, making sure it was fine to dive right into. As the CIT was frozen in fear, Gwen and Trent joined the Gophers as Gwen was standing far from Trent while Naruto and Dawn were finally arriving to join the group. Dawn was holding DJ's pet rabbit close to her with a few birds perched on her head while more rabbits were following her. Everyone saw the two and were shocked at seeing the state Dawn was in, especially one practical camper. Dude, what happened to her? Jeff asks as Dawn's eyes were still bloodshot and her hair was still mostly a mess. She didn't take her challenge very well. Naruto just says as he pets Dawn gently on the shoulder. The aura reader was silent and chose to be close to Naruto and her animal friend. I think she just needs a lot of natural energy and she'll be fine. He says. He looks at the pool and sees the contents with it. So, what's up with the jelly? He asks. It's what she's afraid of. Duncan explains, chuckling a little as he points at Courtney, who was still frozen. She's afraid of jelly. Jelly, really? Naruto couldn't help but deadpan at the CIT as a sweat drop was running down his head. Didn't see that coming. He says. I am not afraid of jelly. Courtney snaps at the blonde/red hair, startling the few birds hanging around Dawn. Oh, only the green kind. It's like sugary, jiggly snot. Okay Courtney, your challenge should be pretty obvious. Either dive into the pool of jello. But I'll make things more interesting if you don't jump. The Gophers points double and they win. You jump, your team wins. So, what is it going to be? Chris asks, warning her of what was on the line. Sighing heavily, Courtney begins her dreadful walk to the ladder. This is insane, I could seriously die from this. Courtney says as she reaches the ladder and starts to climb up it. Is this even safe? Trent couldn't help but ask. Relax. Everything is perfectly safe. The jello will absorb the force and will act like a cushion really. We even had a few interns test this challenge out before we even got here and they're fine, mostly that is. Chris says, laughing a little. Heather looks at the jello in the pool and thought of a way to psyche Courtney out of this. Oh man, that's just cruel. It's probably warm by now. Warm, green jello, snotty bouncy jello. Heather says, describing how it could feel by now if you were to jump right in. This causes the others to gasp before cringing at the description. You're not going to make me quit. Courtney shouts, glaring at Heather, who looks up at her and smiles as the base cheers her on. That's it. Keep climbing. Duncan yells at her to keep going up. She's just trying to psyche you out. You can do this. Bridget yells along, trying to help Courtney drown out the doubts she could be having while she climbs up. They're right, Courtney. I know this is strong and sucks that you're diving headfirst into your fear, but we'll get you out of it fast and get you to a shower right away. Naruto yells, as he and the others nod and get ready should she jump. Courtney finally makes it to the top and walks over to the edge of the diving board and looks down to the pool and sees the green jello. Her vision starts to go double as she feels nauseous. It's okay, Courtney. You'll be fine. You can do it. Don't think about the jello when you dive. Think about water. Duncan yells up to Courtney, hoping that this would help Courtney to jump. Think about water, think about water. Courtney mutters, repeating the Duncan's advice. She looks down at the pool again and envisions the jello as clean blue water. She takes in a deep breath, sees her eyes, and leans forward, leaping off the diving board and dives toward the jello and... Ah, my head. Courtney utters as she begins to wake up. She felt ill and nauseous. She started opening her eyes and saw she was staring at a green ceiling, something she wasn't familiar with. Where am I? You're in the infirmary tent. Courtney hears a deep voice beside her and she turns to see who it is. She sees Chef, who is reading from a newspaper. You're in the infirmary, girl. What happened? You jumped off and landed in the pool of jello. But when your team went to get you out, you passed out. Ah, really? Courtney asks as she sits up from the bed she was on and feels her body was indeed sticky and had some chunks of green jello stuck on various parts of her body. Yep. Chef nonchalantly says as he turns a page of his newspaper. Courtney started getting nervous about the aftermath of her challenge since she had no idea what happened. So, what happened? After I jumped and landed into the pool. Courtney stutters, nervous about what Chef could say. The man in question looks up from his paper and looks at her for a bit before answers her question. You won. Chef says, and Courtney looks at him with a shocked expression. We won? Courtney asks, thinking she misheard Chef, but he nods in a slightly annoyed manner. Yeah. While you did faint upon landing in the pool, you did jump off, so you won the challenge on a technicality. Chef explains how the base won, but Courtney wasn't listening as she was shocked by the fact they won. Before that shock slowly turns to joy and excitement as she starts smiling. We won. Courtney yells, shooting from her bed and starts jumping on the floor. Overjoyed about the win / but her celebrations were cut off by Chef, who was annoyed by her antics. Yeah, you won. Now if you're feeling better. Get out. Chef barks to Courtney, causing her to stop jumping and flinch at his shout. Alright. Sorry. Courtney yells before she runs out of the infirmary tent and straight to the camp, to go and get clean and go celebrate with her team. Whatever, maggot. Chef just said before he got up and left the infirmary tent, to go and clean the pool of jello so he could use said jello in tonight's dinner. What Chef or everyone else weren't aware of was that Owen had gone back to the green jello pool, realizing it was warm to what Heather was correct, and sat in it for a bit, before he ate all the jello in the pool in one sitting. Gophers, 5 out of 10, base, 7 out of 10. Winners, the killer base. Later that night. Location, the dramatic bonfire ceremony. Night fell upon Camp Wawanakwa and the dramatic bonfire ceremony was taking place, with the screaming Gophers on the chopping block to be sent home. 5 of the 10 Gophers had already received their marshmallows from Chris. The ones who did receive their marshmallows and were saved were Beth, Cody, Gwen, Izzy, and Owen. The ones who didn't receive any marshmallows were the ones who failed their challenges. There are only 4 marshmallows left on this plate. The 5 of you were one of 5 who didn't complete your challenges today. One of you is going home tonight and can't return, ever. Chris says as he puts emphasis on the fact that once they were eliminated from the game, they couldn't come back, ever again, and this causes the 5 to be rather nervous. The next names I'm gonna call are Save. The host says as he pauses and makes the 5, the rest of the team, and those watching to be nervous about who were safe. Heather, Lashana, and Beth. He calls the 3 girls, much to their relief as they stand and walk over to the plate and take the sweet treat of them being safe. But this causes Trent, the guitarist, and Tyler, the athlete, to nervously look at one another, knowing they were on the chopping block. The final marshmallow goes to Chris. Once again pauses, intentionally causing drama to happen as the 2 teens nervously wait in anticipation for their name to be called, and after what felt like forever, Chris finally speaks. Trent. He calls out the final name as Trent lets out the breath he wasn't aware he was holding, while Tyler only looks down in defeat at his elimination. He stands up and starts making his way to the dock of shame, where the boat for losers was waiting for him. I'm sure you'll catch that chicken next time. Izzy says, making a little chicken pun in the process. Tyler walks past Chris, who looks at him as he walks away. Looks like a new pecking order has been established here. Chris says, also making a chicken pun. Guess he won't be flying high tonight. Cody says, joining in on the he won't fly to the skies after this. Heather also joins in on the pun-making action. Before anyone else could say a pun, someone had enough. Okay, that's enough, the guy has had enough. Gwen says softly, clearly showing she wasn't amused by the poor jokes the others were making. She just gets up and walks away, back to the cabins. The others watch her leave and wonder what was her issue, while Trent could only see her walk away and feel bad since this was his fault Gwen was like this. As Gwen walks toward the cabins, she hears laughter and soft giggling near her. Looking around, she spots Naruto and Dawn up in a tree, sitting/hanging off a branch as they were stargazing and just enjoying each other's company. While she looks at the 2, Gwen couldn't help but feel envious of Dawn, while at the same time, feeling like Naruto was familiar to her, but how and just who was he to her for her to feel this way? Deciding to think about this later, Gwen resumes her walk to her cabin to turn in for the night and hopefully forget this day. So alright folks, that's all for today. Stay tuned for part 6. Do subscribe, like and share for more such videos. Also check out the story and author Pixel's fanbook on fanfiction.net. Press the bell icon to be notified first on release. See you in the next video. Till then, goodbye.